Hi, I'm Banksy.
Owen Christy, Mindfreak.
This is Secret London, Brockley. For me, it's a very powerful segment of London, a very kind of coherent part of the pie. You can see just about everything from here.
You know, all those years ago in the 12th century, when Thomas à Becket was first exiled to France from King Henry from Brockley.
From Brockley, exactly. Which, by the way, is an etymological fact.
Which gave such power to the church and why there is such a strong Christian community here now.
It's very, very heartwarming, actually. I've always found this strong Christian community here very heartwarming. I often, when I'm walking at night, as I often do, from my house to, say, the corner shop or to the main road, I like to go to the main road, I will walk via numerous churches, including St. John's, which is nearby. And actually, one of my favourite things to do is to just wander in and just sit on the pew, literally take a pew, and just contemplate. Think hard about, think really hard about King Henry VIII. You know, we have an awful lot to be thankful for in this community. Well, just down and on the right is where me and Owen often used to go and visit. It's the Wishing Tree, which is a kind of grand, I don't know if it's an oak or a birch, God knows, but it's a very grand and beautiful tree. Local kind of folklore dictates that if you go there and touch the bark and kind of rub the bark and make a wish, the wish will come true. We often go down there and wish together. Personally, I've never been particularly good at tennis, but I appreciate it as a sport. It's very kind of noble, and it's sort of the thinking man's badminton, but obviously without the history. But yeah, tennis is a very noble sport, and one of the things I've always liked about it is the kind of the crowd it attracts, you know, Henman Hill and Wimbledon and all that kind of stuff. And it's nice to think that this kind of environment is becoming more, it's less of a taboo for gentlemen such as this chap, this sleeveless chap here, to kind of come and kick back and enjoy a nice round of tennis, really kind of hit the ball back and throw. And it's very moving. To the untrained eye, this is simply a meadow, which in fact it is, Telegraph Hill to be precise. But what not many residents around here understand is that this particular meadow has a checkered past. It was in 1792 that Sir William of Orange postponed his invasion of Ireland in order to come back to this section of London where in fact he'd grown up. And it was in this particular meadow that he reputedly enjoyed an evening with a lady of the night and spawned the Saxe-Coburg family, which was later to become, as we know them, the Windsors. Roughly 100 years ago, it was actually completely flat. In fact, this whole area was flat. The entire neighbourhood is in fact an artificial hill that was built out of pottery, salvaged from the Spanish Armada.
Well, you say roughly, but it would actually be 100 years to this day that we're reminded of the greatest, certainly one of the biggest pottery laying triumphs of South London. Whole
It's iconic.
Community, you know, from clay. And anyone that knows their Brockley oats would tell you that Brockley is land matched with a small province of Idaho called Flinch. The Idaho potato famine of the 14th century had an impact on Brockley. There was very little vegetation at the time. One thing that always prevailed, and one thing that kept the spirit of a nation alive and fed thousands of men, was mushrooms, fungi.
Mushrooms were a huge influence on this entire neighbourhood, much like the pottery. The two kind of go hand in hand, really, which ultimately is the reason we get to enjoy such wonderful parks like this now, because the Victorians were notoriously altruistic when it came to public spaces. And had it not been for the great mushroom and pottery surge, we wouldn't be able to enjoy such a wonderful view as this. As you can see, excellent street art and skateboarders in the background.
I mean, we're lucky, and we've got a lot of thanks to give to the Victorians, to the Elizabethans, you know, without which none of this would be possible. We wouldn't be sitting here right now, and if we were sitting here right now, we'd probably be sitting on a barren wasteland. Dust and grass. Did you know that the first form of public London transport was created here in Brockley by the Chinese. What do we think of when we think of transport in London? We think of the Underground. And that's exactly where the first original transportation system in London was. Underground. In fact, it was so far underground that lots of residents new to the system found it difficult to find.
It was 200 years ago on this very spot that tickets were first invented. Def Castrati came together with members of the Masonic group in order to invent a system that would allow buses to go to and from Overcliff Road to Undercliff Road.
So what form were these tickets in, these early tickets?
This is where we get the word tablet from. Early tickets were imprinted on tiny tablets of paracetamol so that you would simultaneously be able to cross the bridge and deal with a headache.
We top up our oysters now with the greatest of ease. A lot of it can be done online, and as we know, you can even put your travel money on your credit card nowadays. It couldn't be easier.
It couldn't be easier. Like its older cousin, the Antiques Roadshow, the Plant Fair Roadshow in Brockley has been happening for 7,000 years.
Get quite a low yield, but it's a good crop, French salad. We haven't seen it actually in South London for quite a while, so kind of exciting.
Ditto dill, which is an unusual herb to find. And this is why events like this are allowed to happen.
And that's exactly what we were talking about. We were talking about the fungi, the mushrooms, the kind of uprising of herbs and fungi through the Elizabethan kind of transition, which Brockley has gone through. And this is a celebration of that. And, I mean, look around, look at what, you know, look at what we are able to produce.
There's an armada of herbs.
As soon as you walk in, you can smell 1,000 different aromas. And they don't contrast each other, do they? Actually,
they never do.
Mix together quite well, like a cocktail.
In Latin, it's known as Orgasmus retardus, but the wild swan, as we know it colloquially, has been grown in Brockley for over 7,000 years.
It has, and it flies high still. In fact, the wild swan was probably the first plant that ever existed. It's existed way before humanity, and it'll probably outlive us way after we're all gone.
The question remains, where else in the world could you be simultaneously stung by nettles and relieved by dock leaves?
So, what more fun to be had if you're a green-fingered gentleman like me than being here at the Brockley Flower Roadshow? But at 35 quid for a pop plant, I think it's safe to conclude that it is a fucking rip-off.
Feed the birds, twopence a bag, twopence,
Tuppence.
twopence a bag. This is Brockley Abbey. Over 7,000 years ago, the abbot Jamie Fieldhouse stole a sewing machine from a skip and placed it just where this doorway now sits. For over 900,000 years, residents of Brockley have been flocking to this spot, pilgrims if you will, in order to enjoy the auratic nature of the said sewing machine.
Urban folklore also has it that this was the original place that Thomas à Becket, towards the end of the 12th century, was visited by his four tempters in his dreams. The four tempters now are why we call the local Wetherspoons pub the Brockley Barge.
When the Greco-Romans invaded Britain and overcame King Boudicca, that each individual brick was brought here from Santander.
We've done our research, and we're fairly sure there are over 60 inhabitants of Brockley.
And every one of them is registered with the International Federation of Parkour Experts.
That's right. And not only that, every single one of them, bar one, can roll a damn good pakora.
Will Church is one of a handful of famous residents that have lived in Brockley. He's commemorated to this very day with this wheelie bin.
It's quite an attraction. In fact, the first binman that ever existed 7,000 years ago started his career in Brockley. But they didn't call them binmen, they called them bin lords. First bin lord from Brockley was called James Walter Stoppard.
And he regularly rode the 343 to City Hall. This is a 343. It never stops. It goes from Peckham through Brockley and on to New Cross Gate. It's so convenient, it's the bus that everybody takes.
It's the only bus I take. There it goes!
There's a high suicide rate amongst men in Brockley, aged between 20 and 30. Common occurrence and something that's prevalent in the rest of the nation, but Brockley nonetheless does have its fair share.
I've heard that.
Yeah. This particular bridge is not a bridge that anybody commits suicide on, because as you can see it's caged. Arched and caged, but in the distance you can see Battersea Power Station.
So, the cage was established to prevent people from killing themselves.
However,
Suicidal people, being suicidal people, still managed to find a way.
there are stories aplenty from the early 30s in this area of men even dashing their heads against the chicken wire in order to somehow bash their brains through and onto the tracks below.
I don't consider myself a particularly spiritual person, but I'm kind of feeling that sorrow.
I can feel a presence here, certainly.
It's kind of, I don't know.
It's very moving.
You could just imagine them leaping, just like lemmings, to their death.